Good evening and welcome to the June 18th meeting of the Long Meadow Select Board. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, I will bang the gavel and we will move into reorganizing the Select Board. We just had our election last Tuesday. Myself and Richard Foster were reelected, but we always reorganize, so what do
I
we
place
have?
a motion on the table that Mark Gold be appointed to the chair of the Select Board for the following one-year term.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay.
Place a motion on the table that Marie Angelides be appointed the vice chair for the following one-year term.
Okay. We'll second that. All right. All those in favor?
That's all the motions I got.
All the motions? Okay. We have a motion for a clerk, or do we continue our clerk?
I move to make Bill Lowe clerk. Okay,
The what?
clerk,
It's Bill.
select board.
Clerk of the board. All right.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? All right. So, do we change seats?
We don't need to. I don't think for this evening we need to. This is fine.
Okay.
You have one more
Why wouldn't
chance.
I can pass. I can pass the
you? If
gavel.
somebody
Next
tunes
meeting.
in later
And
and
I'll
didn't
be-
catch this part of it, they'll be like, why is Mark?
You know, it'll be one of the great mysteries of our meetings.
No, I think Stephen wants you moved down. He's been counting the minutes.
I'll have a much healthier year. Mark's been sick all year.
Well,
Every
you
time
pass
every
the
Sunday he's
gavel.
cold.
Fine, thank you.
Bill, can you
I don't
pass the
intend to use
gavel,
this.
you put it in front by your name tag, and everyone will know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ask if
Congratulations.
there are any announcements by select board members. Marie?
I would just like to thank Tom for his year of service as the chair of the select board. I know it's really difficult, and you rose to the occasion. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. Any other announcements, Stephen? Do you have any?
Not this time.
Okay. Any resident comments? No? Okay. Select board comments. Bill?
I have just one comment. I thought it was interesting that they're doing some work on my street, replacing the gas mains. And the gas company notified me, I got the letter the afternoon where they'd been there since 7 o'clock in the morning. So it it didn't bother me. It's just kind of a waste of a stamp, you know?
Interesting. Yeah, I just have a couple of comments. My first comment is I want to really congratulate the athletic teams of the Long Meadow High School. While some people weren't looking, our girls and boys lacrosse teams both won the Central Western Mass Championship. Our girls and boys tennis teams both won the Central Western Mass Championships, and the baseball team won their first ever Central Western Mass Championship, and I think it's worthy of acknowledging that and recognizing them, because in addition to their outstanding academics, they're also pretty good in sports, and I think they deserve to be congratulated on that. A couple other things. I want to just thank the members of the Select Board for electing me to be chair. I hope we have a very productive year. We're going to try to put together I won't say an aggressive agenda, but a full agenda to keep things going before, throughout the year. Hopefully we'll have some meaty issues at most of our meetings, if not all of our meetings. The only other thing I just comment on it in terms of the Select Board is, for people at home who don't know, we have had a member of the school committee resign. Jessica Hutchins submitted her resignation effective last week, I believe, and according to the bylaws, I think it's the charter actually of the town, the Select Board and the school committee jointly appoint a replacement to fill the vacancy on the school committee until the next election. And so sometime during the summer, we will be doing that. There's, I assume, going to be a meeting to try to set up a time. So I'd say for the members of the Select Board, just don't be surprised if you don't get an email asking for your schedule. See if we can't set up a common time with the school committee. If I recall, the last time we did this, and there was something in our packet also that we had a policy, a procedure put together. We could probably do this in one evening. It's not going to take multiple nights to do that. So anyway, okay, that's all I had.
That's a comment. I went to the high school graduation, and as usual, the musical entertainment was spectacular. It was really enjoyable to be there. And we had one of the students who sang has a record contract in Los Angeles, so that's kind of exciting. It's, I guess it's the challenge is out for the males in our community to get record contracts because the women are outnumbering them. But it was kind of nice to see all these young people, and the students who spoke did a really good job also. So.
Thank you, Tom. We have at least every once a month, but usually in each meeting, we ask the town manager to fill us in on the goings-on of the administrative side of the towns. Stephen, I don't know if you have anything you want to report on your town manager's report. We did have a complete list of individual reports from department heads, but
You do have the reports from the department heads. I apologize, I was called out of town unexpectedly last week, so I was not able to put together my own report. But just to briefly update the board on a couple of things. I did attend the Western Mass Economic Development Conference. Actually, Bill and I were there together. And I thought Governor Baker came and spoke for the luncheon keynote, and I think there's just a lot of good news emanating from economic development circles in Western Mass. And I know sometimes in Long Meadow, because we're a multi-residential community, we feel somewhat insular with regards to economic development, but the economic fortunes of the region definitely affect our economic fortunes, our house prices, all those things. The ability for people to move here and have a quality job that they can go to and support their family and our community. So I was really struck by how positive many of the things are, and really how well Western Mass, how well the governor recognized Western Massachusetts for really being a leader in collaboration and working together, where you don't always find that in other parts of the state and other parts of the country. So that was, like I said, a good event. I feel good about the fortunes of this region. And then the other thing is, and I sent the board an email today. We've hit our first unforeseen circumstance of the DPW project regarding some asbestos-containing materials found on site. That sounds a lot worse than it is. I don't say it's no big deal, but it is a completely manageable situation, and the cost to fix the situation will be basically a time and materials cure. So there's no, we didn't discover, nuclear waste or anything like that. It's a pretty standard thing. It'll probably add up to a significant amount of money just because the labor and disposal costs are high for hazardous materials like asbestos-containing materials. And there's other aspects of that we're looking into as well, but I just wanted to let the board know that we were supposed to be set up and tearing the building down this week, and that's going to be a little bit delayed. Similarly, not similarly, but Dwight Road is also in the early stages of going under construction. We have not issued the full notice to proceed, but I know the contractor is doing some partial work. We are nailing down the last of the easements, the temporary easements we need, and I expect to have those by the end of this week, and they'll be full. The Gomes, who's the contractor, will be full go in the near future. So I did see tonight there's a variable message board sign coming up from Springfield on Dwight Road, and I think they have one on Maple coming into town from East Long Meadow. So we're trying to get the word out that people should expect delays and seek alternate routes. And that's, and I will say, the one positive thing is the drier weather has slowed down the rate of grass. I think it's given residents in town a chance to catch up. We were pretty busy following up on complaints about grass and things like that, so I think that's abated a little bit. And I don't know if you have anything.
Just that our application into the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund was accepted. We have a 90-day waiting period, and after that, we will begin to get our funds over there. We do have some CDs that are invested that we will allow those to mature, and once they mature, we'll have all our money over there sometime in early 2019.
That's it for me.
Does anybody have any questions of the town manager or assistant town manager? Richard?
No.
Marie?
About all of his reports and everything, or just what he talked about now?
Any of the reports? No, the
Yeah.
reports as well, I think, are fair game.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure to put on the table again, that was a project that we had talked about several months ago, and that was the library agreement. And I know you have to get that going in the next few months, and I just wanted to remind you of that. That's all. Thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, it said that the health department certified a place for the Bay State Urgent Care Center, which is going to be in the Long Meadow Shops. And now, does that consider a nonprofit or a profit? I mean, does that affect things?
For-profit. I can tell you they're very much
They're definitely
for-profit.
for profit, okay. So there'll be, and is there any sort
The
of,
taxes are on the owner of the property
okay,
is taxable, and so even if you rented it to a not-for-profit or a tax-exempt entity, I still think property taxes would be due because of the ownership.
mhm. And do we know when they'll be opening?
Soon, I went through there maybe a week and a half ago, and they were pretty close. They do have an X-ray machine, which is very handy, near all of our ball fields, which wasn't lost on them. So it looks like a really nice facility, and I think will be a really great alternative for most healthcare issues for people in the community, besides driving all the way to Mercy or Bay State or something like that.
Yeah.
Tom, I didn't hear about that. Where is that going to be?
It's next to Max's. It's where the Peach Wave was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where the wave was, yeah.
Wave.
Yeah, it's been kind of pretty low-key about
There's a
that.
sign on the door that I think says, I guess says not open yet or something, but,
They're probably waiting on some
yeah.
inspections.
Okay. Anything else, Tom?
No, that's it.
Bill?
I don't-
Stephen, I have two quick things. One is, there was something in there about tree warden, but it didn't, do we have a new tree warden?
We do have a new tree warden.
Who?
His name is Jason Scott. He's actually a relatively new employee, but he came to us with a lot of municipal DPW experience from other communities. He and his wife moved out this way for a lifestyle choice, and I think they had met at UMass Amherst. It's not like too personal, but they think they went to school out here and decided they wanted to return this way. He is great. Very lucky to get him. And I think one of the big issues, Jeff McAllman remains with the department as a deputy director, but tree warden is a very busy job, and we wanted to free up some of Jeff's time to focus on, broader department issues. Jeff will certainly still assist with, add his knowledge about trees to the work of the tree warden, but in terms of kind of really mostly interacting with residents and following up and staffing the tree committee, we were looking for someone who had a little more time to be able to do that and didn't have the same level of responsibility. So
Great. The other comment, is a question I had, and actually, Paul Pasturzik sent something out this afternoon to all of us about a proposal from Clark Rowell, who's our finance consultant with what bank is he? He's with one of the banks.
Unibank.
Unibank, right. But one of the things I guess I had a question about whether it's the DPW or the adult center. We hear that interest rates are going up, and the Fed's going to meet 2 or 3 more times this year or next year. I don't know if it's a question, Paul, or a comment, but is borrowing sooner better than borrowing later? And is this something that we can look at it more closely, in the near rather than distant future, whether it's with you or through the whole select board? It's just a question I have.
Well, my understanding is that the interest rates that are going up are more in the short-term yields as opposed to the long-term yields. I know mortgage rates are going up also, but at a slower rate. In speaking with Clark, he feels that the August timeframe, which is our schedule to get this done, around mid-August, he thought that was a prime time for municipal borrowing. So, I mean, we kind of jumped on it. Instead of borrowing short-term and just paying interest, just jump right into it and kind of can get it going and pay it off sooner than later, is my feeling also. So
Anyway,
I didn't know about the tax rate impact, if there were comments there, but I'm assuming he would be available at the next meeting if we wanted to have him in.
Well, we'll talk about
Structure.
whether it's the next meeting or one after that, but I think we got a lot of borrowing to do in this town based for two projects, and interest
Yeah.
rates are doing things, and it's, I think, worth the select board talking about it, so.
Yeah, I'd agree. If there's anything the select board can do to move the process along before the mortgage rates go up, because we've talked about that quite a bit, and other towns have talked about it. In terms of building their own senior centers, they said, well, now is the time to build a senior center while the interest rates are low. You don't want to wait, and so I'm glad you're already looking at an August date, so thanks, Paul.
Thanks. Any other questions for the town manager?
Actually, Can I just make one
Go
more?
ahead.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Tom for his year as chair. As the town manager and the chair work very closely together, regardless of who the chair is. And I just wanted to say that Tom did a good job. It was no matter who the chair was going to be, it was going to be a relatively, I'll say, quiet year, but a year where we were focused on processing the tremendous amount of work that we got through at last year's two-day town meeting. And it was going to be less about new initiatives and things like that, because we want to make sure we did the work we had on our plate correctly. And Tom was supportive of that, and always accessible to bounce ideas off of. And the result is, we had very favorable bids on our big projects, and we were able to get the senior center project to a position where the voters could decide. And so we had a lot of accomplishments, even if we weren't necessarily rewriting policies and doing a lot of that other stuff. And I think, Tom kept the ship steady, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go into old business. I'm going to move a couple of things out of order. First one is to approve the minutes of the June 4th, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes or to amend them?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Richard Foster, seconded by Bill Lowe. Any comments, questions, concerns? All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
401, and Lee was not present at the time. I wanted to just move forward a second on the town manager evaluation process discussion. I think that's maybe a relatively short item before we get into wrestling with some policies that may need to be written. That was on the agenda, if you recall. I had suggested at the last meeting that we talk about it, because I think that I would hope that we needed to clarify a little bit of what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And I say that because for people at home who are just watching, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled on, actually it was based on a lawsuit of how you can and cannot do performance reviews of public officials. And it indicates that no member of the board who's doing the evaluation can act as the accumulator or consolidator of the evaluations, that when it's released publicly, when it's released to the board, it needs to be released publicly at the same time. So you can't have, the board knowing what's going on Monday and the public not knowing till the following Monday, for example. And so one of the things that Tom, as past chair, has suggested is that we send all of our comments into Debbie. But what the Supreme Court ruling doesn't say, and what we didn't get, is what are our marching orders, if you will, to Debbie, because there are different ways that things have been done in the past. There have been, and the Supreme Court ruling is silent on this. Do you put together a single consolidated report that says, the 5 reports that we submit kind of, get used, and some person writes a single summary that best evaluates what, or assesses what, or consolidates what those 5 people did? Or is it somebody who just takes and cuts and pastes our 5 individual comments? And if our system, for people who don't know, there's a ranking system 1 through 5, so they say, yeah, instead of saying, well, the average was 2.7 or 4.8, it says there were 3 people who had a 4 and 2 people who had a 5, and instead of just writing evaluations, do we give the numbers? I think it's important that we tell Debbie what we expect of her, because I think either system works, and we've done it both ways. In the past, we've actually had a consolidated report put together, but we've also listed all of them separately and never really and not till after we discussed it had a consolidated report. So I think it's important that we do that. So that was the reason I want that brought up. Obviously, I have some opinions. I just want to hear if anybody else was concerned. Tom?
Yeah, I wish the court had come up with this ruling a year ago, because I had to consolidate I wouldn't have done all that work. I could have had Deb do it, who would have done a great job, I'm sure. I do think it would be helpful when we look at evaluations to get both sides of it. So as our role as Stevens supervisors, basically, it would be nice to have a consolidation of all of our comments and our scores. But I also think it would be good to use we have 9 evaluations in department heads, and to have those department head comments put together, because if you've looked over the comments, it's a pretty strong view of how the people who he supervises see his work, and it may provide a contrast to ours, or it may be parallel ours. But there are places that do this sort of 360 evaluation, and so that's something to think about.
Richard?
Yes.
I don't know where you've been where they've done it, but I've
Well,
completed 40-some years in the system, and it's never been entered because
Yeah.
their comments have no bearing on our feelings of the performance of this gentleman. That's another viewpoint. That's more for his personal development, not for us.
Well, that's what these are for, his
But
personal
it's his,
development.
it's his. The 360 is intended for his use, not for our use. It's a total different
Right.
opinion base. I mean, his people aren't holding him accountable for the performance elements that are in those standards. They're giving you a personality reflection on how they manage and how they get along with the manager. And it's very valuable. It's more valuable to Stephen. As I said before, I don't even need to see the evaluations because they're really none of my business. It has nothing to do with my impression of the performance that Stephen has done
Yeah.
based on the standards that we have for him.
Well, I would just say that it's used, like in university settings, they do that, so that it is used, but.
I
maybe
said
not in
360s are used, but they're not used to evaluate people from the supervisor.
public. Oh, no, I'm not saying we'd have used,
When
well.
You just
I
said
could
combine
use
all
it
the
as-
comments, and they're irrelevant. They're two
Yeah.
totally
Okay.
different documents.
We're going
Right.
to stop this debate a little bit, Marie.
Okay, Marie, yes.
Actually, I think Tom brings up an interesting point. Since Debbie sent those to all of us, does that now go underneath, does that now become a public record? So did it go in the packet?
It is-
did? Oh,
it is.
because I thought I got it
It
outside
didn't go in
the
the
packet.
packet, but it.
It's public
It
record.
wasn't in this week's packet.
What, the results?
No,
No,
the-
the 360s.
But she sent them out to everybody as a standalone.
A standalone, but it never went into the packet. So it's got to go into the packet to become a
No.
part of. Oh, it doesn't?
No, by virtue of the fact she sent it to all of you, it's a public
It's a
document,
public
isn't it?
Document,
No,
correct.
but I'm saying,
Right,
but it
right.
doesn't
Right.
go, in other words, the public has to have the right to anything we've all received.
Mhm.
And so where is it
Upon,
placed?
upon request.
Oh, I always thought it had to go in the packet if it went to
No,
us.
no, it doesn't.
No.
I don't
And
know.
since it's not considered part of this, it doesn't go under that Supreme Court ruling.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, so I'm going to give some opinion here, but I mean, I have two opinions. One opinion is that I would like to see this done, and it's, again, my opinion, is have somebody consolidate all of our comments and evaluations into a single document, so that under section 1, there's 5 responses, under section 2, 5, whatever it is. And then I would like to see us come back at a subsequent meeting and discuss it in an open forum and come to a consensus on each. So rather than, say we're going to use the averages 4.3 or whatever it is, we'll talk about it and we'll say, okay, we're going to rate him a 5 on this item. And then one of us who gets assigned then, based on that public review, to then write up a consolidated performance appraisal, which becomes, if you will, the cover sheet for 5 individual performance appraisals. I think it's very difficult for an individual to walk away with 5 performance appraisals that may be divergent from one another, as opposed to saying we're using those as a public document as our initial discussion period. We can, set it so we're only going to put a certain amount of time, and we could, so we don't discuss it all night long, but we come up with Stephen and say, Stephen, as a consolidated board, your score on that is a 4.2, or your score on that is a 2.4, whatever it is. Because I think that's the way he's going to get the better feedback than just 5 different performance reviews. And I'm willing to take on, first of all, I think we owe it to the people in the town to discuss the results publicly. And I'm willing to take on as the town, as the new chair of the select board, that consolidation based on the discussions that we have at that consolidation meeting. Marie?
I don't like the cut and paste and putting that out, but then what's gonna happen, whether you're writing or I'm writing it, how we describe the elephant is different weights. So you might say, this was really important, and in our discussion, I'll say, well, that wasn't really important, and then when I read yours, the way you consolidate is gonna be different from the way I consolidate it.
But the score is going to be whatever we agree to in the.
I know, but the meats and I'm worried about the summaries. And it's not that I'm saying that you're going to do something nefarious. I'm going to say your viewpoint. I mean, look, what do you call me? You call me, what is it that you call me?
Rosie.
Rosie. Okay, you call me Rosie, and you are not the Rosie person. And so when I read, and I think I think a 5.4, I'll say, that's really a good score. And when you say 5.4, you're gonna. So it's just a matter of two different perspectives.
And that's fine. Again, it was my opinion and it was a proposal. I'm not enforcing it. But I still think either way, there needs to be a discussion in an open forum. And, maybe, Stephen, you're going to end up having to take away your consolidation from the discussion and the minutes that come out of that, rather than have a single document. The downside is what ends up in, and I know we don't really have them, but in a personnel file. I mean, maybe there are personnel files, but
Yeah, I mean, I think.
So what goes in the personnel file? 5 separate reports?
It's what always happens because it's public document.
Not
anyways.
last year. Last year, Tom wrote one.
No, but the 5,
No.
if I may. 'Cause
Okay, go ahead.
So, and we do, each year, there are 5, we'll call them gross documents, meaning all of the information. And those all get consolidated. I think the Supreme Court decision was an elected official cannot do that consolidation.
Right.
Debbie has to do that consolidation, cut them all, paste them all, but they are all verbatim for what each of you individually filled out. That master document, if you will, is the official record, the official record of the evaluation. And I see that, I read all the comments, and I take away, the feedback is, even if there's not consensus on it, I still, think about the feedback, try and, internalize what I can and make changes where I think I must. In the past, for the sake of a more efficient discussion here, there's been some level of consolidation where if there was a redundancy of points of view, then those were kind of consolidated into one comment in the consolidated document. And then when there was only one opinion, it was still put in the consolidated document, but it was more to reduce duplicative thoughts and themes. I think it's fine either way. I think the Supreme Court decision, I think you're right, Mark, it makes it so that kind of condensing of thoughts needs to happen in an open meeting, which is fine. We do it all. We kind of end up doing it that way anyway.
Right.
So Debbie takes it. You all send her Word documents. She cuts and pastes them all together and then redistributes it, and that is a public document and must be discussed in open session. And that's, I think we have done that every year, but in the past we've also done that extra step. But I don't know if that's a necessary step.
Huh?
Yeah, I guess I would agree that we should have the open discussion as we always have, and I think the most accurate picture would be just to take and combine the 5 reports that we do. So,
Any other?
that was what.
We've done that. That's what we've done every year.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So
Nothing new. No.
if I can summarize what I'm hearing people say is, if we have not already done so, send your report to Debbie, and Debbie's instructions are, Debbie, what you're getting is confidential, can't be released to anybody. And I know you have an issue that includes Stephen, who's sitting in your office, and because you don't get to see it until we all get to see it, is my understanding. That's the reading.
I'm not an elected official.
I'm not an elected official either. You're part of the public.
No, I'm saying that it was the Supreme Court ruling was an open meeting decision. And as a non-elected official, I'm not subject to the open meeting law. Nevertheless, I'll see it when it goes in the packet with the rest of you. I'm not, it's fine.
All right, fine. But Debbie, the Supreme Court ruling was that we have to post it on the internet at the time it's distributed to us. So somehow, we can't, that's what it said, Marie. We can't distribute it in our packet and say, now it's public information. It specifically said it needed to be posted on the internet, on the town's website, which then allowed us to then distribute it to the 5 members of the select board. That's the goofy part of this thing. You can't, even when you consolidate and distribute it to us, it needs to be made public at the same time, and that's how they deem making it public, Stephen. That's not, I assume you read the same
I
thing.
didn't read the decision, I just read
Yeah.
MMA's. So
Yeah, okay. But, so, Debbie, we're gonna ask you, we're gonna send it to you, cut and paste them. And when they're all cut and pasted, post them on the internet and send them to us, or wait and do that all at the time when it's appropriate before our board meeting. Does anybody have a disagreement with what I just charged Debbie with doing?
Sounds good.
So there's no editing, there's no consolidation, you just all you have to do is cut and paste 5 Word documents into one. And I presume we'll do it by keeping all the section 1s together, 2s, 3s, all the way up to section 10, right? Last question for everybody, with or without attribution? That's our choice.
Well, half the fun is figuring out who said what.
Well, but I'm saying that because
We always
I
do it
specifically
blind.
went back to the AG's office and asked about that, and they said, it's your choice whether it's with or without attribution.
I'd say without. We've always done it without.
Richard?
I really don't care, because you can usually figure out who's
Yes.
voted anyway,
Tom, do you have a preference?
I would say without attribution. Yep.
I'm certainly not ashamed or afraid to have my name posted by my comments. I'll mention many of those comments in the room, so I have no
Well, I don't
factor.
either. I'm just wondering if the people, the town residents ought to know who's doing what. But Bill, any?
I don't think it matters. I mean, you do it or don't do it. I mean,
Yeah.
They figure out who we are.
Yeah.
I think, Marie, you make it tough, easier than it sometimes is. I think there ought to be with attribution, only because I think it's our duty, the elected officials, to do that. So
That's fine, I don't mind.
you don't
If you're
mind,
chair
Richard,
and
you
that's
don't
what
mind,
want.
Tom, you would rather not?
No, I have nothing to hide. Yeah.
Whether you do it
No.
by initials, Debbie, or something like that, it sounds like there's a consensus to do that.
I can
just so-
always tell Marie's evaluations anyway.
And yours always talks about
Okay, enough of
infrastructure.
enough of that. All right, so Debbie, are you all set now
Put our initials.
with what we're going to be doing here? So if you all can, I know some people have been traveling and other people have been just recalcitrant and not gotten to it yet, but if everybody can, in the next couple of days, get that consolidated, get the evaluation to Debbie, we'll get it on an agenda. Paul, you have a question?
Yeah, did I hear you say that you were going to post the evaluations in the meeting packet?
Yes.
No, what I said is that the MMA summary said, or the SJC summary said, that it cannot be distributed to us unless it is made public at the same time, and SJC recommended that be through posting to the internet.
I'm just reading here from the MMA resource
Yeah.
thing. It says, in either event, once compiled, the aggregate evaluation may not be circulated to a quorum of members prior to a meeting. The aggregate evaluation may only be distributed to a quorum in the meeting, in one of two ways, at a properly noticed open meeting. So I have the feeling it's going to be distributed at the meeting.
But doesn't it also say something about at the time of posting?
Well, it says, or via public posting to a municipal website, so you have
Right.
choices there. I
Right, so
guess.
if Debbie posts it to a municipal website, it now becomes public, and that'll give us a chance to see it in advance.
But I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the options, that's all.
Right, that's why
Okay.
I thought rather than have her come here and hand things out as pieces of paper or something, if it's posted to the internet on the Friday or whatever it is our stuff goes, that meets that requirement, doesn't it, Paul?
She can send, what she would do is, just to make sure we're clear with that, include a link. Just email the select board a link to the website
that's fine.
Yeah. And I think with a select board
That's
of,
good, Stephen.
You post
You know,
it, so what is it? Matt
we
will
have,
be able to-
we have 5 on our select board. You know, the select boards with 3 may have a difficult time with quorums, so I don't know. We always have a quorum. I can't remember the last time we haven't had a quorum.
Well, thank you. I think that, Stephen, you're right. If you do that with a link, it'll probably take care of it. But I just think, you know, we shouldn't walk in here
Blind.
with pieces of paper and you can handle it that way. Thank you. Thank you for let me move that up. I think we've resolved that issue. Next one is a discussion on the Energy Committee's amended mission and composition. So in our packet, in the under old business, there's a proposed energy sustainability committee new mission statement, as well as the old one. And I was wondering if anybody had a chance to look at this and wanted to comment on anything that's proposed. And Marie, we held this off till tonight, knowing you're on the Energy Committee, to see if there was anything that any comments you had. I guess if I was to characterize, well, why don't you just characterize what the changes are that are proposed for folks and what we're looking at?
Well, I think there were 2 things. One is the composition. Originally, what we were trying to do is to have a lot of people, to get the school committee and the select board to work together on a task force. But it's really become more like a committee, a standing committee, and we're really having trouble getting all the committees to commit somebody to the task force. So what we're asking it to become is a committee where we just appoint, like we do already through the select board. And then the members said what we're really doing is, the Energy Task Force was originally looking at the green communities and evaluating our energy consumption and trying to see projects going back in to decrease it, which was, a lot of it was what the town manager was already doing through the green communities. And so we found that there were a lot of other projects that just started to filter our way, such as we started to do the Solarized Long Meadow. We were also asked to reach out and try to help out with the Grinspoon project of conservation in the homes. So the members said what we originally started to, it's really grown, and they're really happy with the committee, and there's a lot of people who want to get on it. And so they rewrote a mission statement and the committee composition so that we're really doing things that were actually agreed to by the select board. So we're coming back to the select board, asking them to look at really how we compose our group that's a more active working group. And we're not getting the committees to appoint, and then the mission statement to more actively reflect what we're doing and what we're hoping to do in the future. And so we're working with the recycle committee and the others, and I think there's been some very interesting projects that have come out. So that's why we're asking for a re-vote on the mission statement and committee composition, and gave you some time, so if you wanted to add some changes or rewrite some things.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Marie or comments? Marie, I have one, and I guess I said this at I think it was the last meeting, or a meeting that Liz Bone was here at, before that you weren't in here, and I had suggested that a potential role of this committee, I drew an analogy between this committee and energy projects with the building committee and building projects, and suggested we add in a bullet here to provide citizen input and oversight in management of energy conservation projects.
That sounds fine. What we do, though, I'm not sure if we're going to we don't want to step into building committee's responsibilities or capital planning. The only thing that we've been doing is sometimes we went to the building committee and asked them to consider charging stations in front of the DPW as well as the senior. We also, I think, approached the building committee about the solarization and what their plans were. So I'm not sure if we would oversee them, but maybe advise or make recommendations to the various groups. And then what we do is at the end, we measure and show what the big changes have been. So as the town manager gives us the what is that called, where you get on that outlet, that website, and,
Mass Energy Insight.
yes, and then we're able to compare last year's. So then we get feedback. So we do follow up on it, but not so much oversight of an actual project.
So who will there be citizen oversight of the projects? I mean,
That
the
would
ones,
be-
there's some that don't fall under the building committee.
I think that would be capital planning, because if we bring something and it's, a project that we were encouraging that happened was I think the ceiling of the windows at the library. And so the oversight of that project really is a town project, and then afterwards we see the conservation later. So I would think that we would advise, recommend, and maybe report, but I don't want to step into actual operations where we're overseeing an actual project. So it might just be words. Maybe you could think of a better word rather than oversight, because right now,
Mark, can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So, and actually, you and I had a conversation about this fairly recently, about boards and committees generally. I think by and large, I'm on the same page as the Energy Committee. I think the stuff, as Marie noted, a lot of the stuff they wanted to do, we either were already doing or thinking about doing, and so they spend a lot of time doing research into issues that, well, town staff sometimes doesn't have the wherewithal to do research, but I see the potential, aside from the fact that in practice I think we work well together, I do see the potential for conflict from a roles and responsibility standpoint. And to be honest with you, this is a trend that seems to be growing in the community amongst other boards and committees. And that is, when you talk about oversight, the charter gives oversight to the office of the town manager. And to start to, pull at the edges of that by policy turns into a slippery slope. And that's where I feel like the permanent building committee's charge, it says advise the town manager and select board. And I think that when you look at this document, in policy editing or policy language editing, big T town versus small T town is a big difference. Big T town, like a capital T with the word town, means municipal corporation that the town manager is responsible for managing and overseeing. Small T is the broader community, the residents of Long Meadow. And so I think there's a role for the Energy Committee to promote sustainability practices to the small T town of Long Meadow, and then provide advice and recommendations to the big T town. But I want to make sure those lines are more clearly drawn than they are in the policy, the way it's presented here.
Okay. Anybody else have any other comments? No? Okay, I was just going to add then, I really feel strongly that there needs to be some level of input of this. And right now it says advise the select board on policies and investments to decrease the consumption, but I think they've got to go beyond that because they can be more involved in, I guess specifically, Stephen, what I'm thinking of is something like streetlight purchases, and so maybe it's advise the town manager and select board, and maybe that sufficiently meets my requirement that we have citizen input into some of the things that go on, because Marie, I believe there are some significant energy projects that don't fall into capital planning, don't fall
Right.
into the building committee, that are straight up energy conservation projects, and I do understand, Stephen, we don't want committees running, taking over what the town employees are directed to do, but I think there needs to be this oversight that they can do at a much level different from the select board can.
I like the idea of us going to the select board, because the select board will then direct the town manager if they want to do it. I mean, information can always be given to the town managers. I hate to have, let's say right now, of course, I love our group, I think our group, but let's say our group becomes very, what do you call it, is not agreeable with what the select board wants to do. And so they're now going to the town manager and advising the town manager and stepping away from the select boards. And so then all of a sudden, we're saying that this committee can advise the town manager, and what if that advice is against what the select board likes? So I want to make sure that our organizational chart still leaves the select board in charge of that. And that's the only thing. Now, I think the way it practically works is like when they came with the streetlights, is that the information was going to you, Mark, because you're like the point person on that, and the town manager, but if you didn't like what you were hearing, you could always, so as long as the select board member is always in the loop, so you could say select board and town manager rather than or. Would that work?
That's fine. Yeah, I'd
Okay.
like to do that, yeah.
I was wondering if I could make a suggestion
Norm.
too. On the third bullet here, it says, advise the select board on issues related to climate change. Could we say advise the select board on research and issues? Because,
Okay.
because if they're doing.
Research, okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot of research that's coming out, and when you have people doing looking at the research, some people are better at finding information than others. And so, when you do that kind of a
That's a good
study,
idea.
that'd be helpful, because we may get something different than what the town is getting.
Sorry. Anybody else have any other comments? I know editing documents by committee is very difficult to do, but I think they did a
Actually,
good job of
we
sending.
do okay with it.
Any other comments?
No
So-
other changes, Ben?
So, so I saw this as, the two changes to what we were sent is, the first bullet, advise the select board and town manager on policies and investments. Marie, is that what you have?
Yes,
And then the third bullet is advise the select board on research and issues?
yes.
Okay, with those changes, is there a motion to accept this modified charter for the Energy Task Force?
Maria?
So moved.
All right.
Second?
Second, yeah.
Tom seconded it. Any other comments? All those in favor? Motion's passed. Thank you all.
I have a question though, Mark, and this is like the next step. And I think the charter committee, I just want you to know it's out there. This is not in the charter, and I know a lot of committees are in the charter, and I don't know when we go and we make changes in the charter, do we now have to include this in the committee, list of committees?
We don't have to, we can, but we have a lot of committees, you're right, that aren't in the charter. So I think select board committees, I think the charter says the select board may appoint other committees as necessary. So
Yeah.
to that extent, it's a legal entity.
It's still legal, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good,
Stephen,
thank
you
you.
agree with that, Cal?
I do. There is a conversation at the Charter Review Committee level about that. Not every committee is going to get codified in charter,
Right.
but there are some where if there is already a mention of a committee or a function in the charter, they may want certain committees codified in the charter, but only if it's like a charter function, charter authorized function.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Any other comments on that? Okay, so the next item we have is a review of it says Budget Policy and Operational Stabilization Fund revisions. There are actually two separate policies. Paul?
Right.
Excuse me.
This came about from a comment or a question that Marie had asked about what happens to if we have any available free cash at the end of our fiscal year with town meeting actions. So I looked at the policies that we had, and there was no mention of that. So as I began to go through this, I did insert that one sentence there, that second paragraph, that any remaining free cash not designated for appropriation at the annual town meeting will be transferred to the Operational Stabilization Fund. So basically, at the annual town meeting, we would bullet and take care of any needs that we did have out of free cash, but any amount that we still had certified that was still available, we would transfer into the Operational Stabilization Fund. Then it posed a couple other questions that conflicted with other policies that we had. We do have a policy regarding our reserve fund balances to equal 5 to 10%. So I wanted to tackle that little notion with that insert on the top line. And then there were some minor modifications in that third paragraph where I did set the floor now at 3% for the amount budgeted to the capital for capital projects. I don't think we'll ever go backwards. I mean, it is a policy, we do have the right not to follow it at certain times, but I think we've already set the floor, so I just upped that from our standard 2% that we had voted probably, well, the standard 2% was voted probably in 2007. We are now at 3. I'm just recommending that we up that floor to 3%, and then the 25% annual increase when affordable would also come into play on that. It kind of goes hand in hand then with the second policy, where I made some minor modifications there too about the operational stabilization fund. Some of it is just corrective in nature, where there is no direct expenditures that can be made of it. And then I wanted to update our fund balance projections and targets. Again, our reserve fund balances that we wanted to have are 5% and 10%, basically is the target of our operating revenues. So I wanted to increase those bullets that we had on the very bottom about minimum and maximum fund balances. And I just gave you a note of what our current fund balance is, and what our target operational stabilization fund balance should be when we compare it to the FY19 budget of $63.4 million. So I don't know if there's any other comments. I tried to make some changes just to basically to update this to where we are today based upon one comment that was made about our free cash at the end of a fiscal year.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Paul about, let's focus, if you don't mind, on the budget policies first, because that's the one we did. Richard, is that the one you were going to ask about?
Yeah, budget policy. Yeah, I've got a lot of heartburn on this 3% for capital, and then with the words in there annually if affordable, because I can easily see it never being affordable. The problem I have is that I can control most of the expenditures in this community. I can stop COLAs, or not COLAs. I can't stop step increase. I can stop the COLAs. I don't have to give the COLAs. That's discretionary. I can change the hiring practices, but one thing I can't do is tell the infrastructure to quit rotting. It's on a predetermined rot schedule right now, and we are grossly underfunding our infrastructure in this town right now, and that's by any standard that you wish to employ. And I see a policy pushing down the road that says, if affordable, maintenance has always and historically been deferred because everybody pushes it out and says, we'll take care of it later. And it doesn't work. In reality, the costs escalate and you never get caught back up. So I can't support that policy. All the other stuff is great. We support every bit of it. I can't support that one because I think it's far too important to our community than to end out and saying, if it's affordable, we'll put more money into that account. I don't see how it's not. We've got to make a decision. We're either going to take care of the infrastructure or we're not.
Can I let Paul
If we're not,
try
we'll
to
sort it
answer
all
that?
out.
I think Paul wants.
Well, yeah,
I don't know if you want to answer it.
I mean, that language actually came from another policy that we have regarding funding of the OPEB. That it was specifically put in there so that when funds were tight on the operating budget, your kind of hands weren't tied by the policy, and you deferred and you kept a certain percentage that you had the year before going into the next fiscal year. That's where it's from, and that's kind of where I copied it from, to allow you some leeway that if the operational budget is tight, sometimes capital gives.
No, I understand,
Yeah,
Paul. No,
that's fine.
I totally understand.
Doesn't mean you have to support it, but
No,
that's exactly.
and I make a massive separation between OPEB and our infrastructure. I really do, because OPEB, you can change things in the way we do business to reduce OPEB liability in this community. I can't change the deterioration rate of the infrastructure. It's already there. It's set, and it's going down. I can't do it.
If I could, Marie.
So you'd be happy with it if we just got rid of the word if affordable?
No, I think when we put this in 2 or 3 years ago, it was 2%, wasn't it, Paul?
It started off at 2%.
And we said we were going to take it up 0.25% per year, and the only thing we didn't do was put an end cap.
Okay.
We never said where we want. I think I had a
Which
lecture.
we still haven't in this.
Right, it's still not in there, but I mean, I could come back and tell you, give you the presentation, show you the condition of our assets at this point. But
So what do you want changed on that?
I don't like the word "if affordable." I think we make a firm commitment. Maybe we make it up by an 1/8% or whatever it is.
So you want to cross out if affordable and change the .25, or you're happy with the .25?
Well, the .25 is what we agreed that we were going to take it up per year.
So do you, if we
And
cross
that-
out
and-
if affordable, you're
And that
happy?
only was to keep it on the front burner so that we were aware of it, and that's not saying it funds it. It doesn't fund it. It just makes us aware that we need to keep putting
So
money into that
if I can
fund.
just move this forward a little bit, so one of the things, Richard, you're saying is if, the words "if affordable" don't throw you, I'm going to throw in that there being no cap to this 3%, just going up 1/4% per year, means that, in 8 years, we're at 5%, and maybe that isn't affordable. And so I'll respond to your, if you take out the word "if affordable," then you better put a cap on it to get
Yeah.
my vote, so.
Well, we can also change it every year, too. I
change-
mean, this policy's not set in stone. It
Right,
can
but
change 3 years from
If we're
now.
going to do that, then why have a policy if you're going to change it every year? That's not a policy, that's
Well,
just a guideline.
and I agree, Mark. I just don't like the thing "if affordable," because I can easily see it never being affordable. I mean, it's,
I think what we need to do is come up with another appropriate word that lets the select board do things, but it needs to be an extraordinary circumstance as opposed to, we just decide not to do that year.
well, I can easily see political activity on this board with certain members might say, well, I want to give something back to the public this year and the tax rate, and we're going to take it out of capital. And that's what happens. You've been on capital planning, you know what
I know.
happens. I mean, we fought too long to get this thing settled down because for many years, the money was not growing. They were rehashing the same $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000.
But Richard, I got to tell you, my personal perception here is that we no longer have the massive number of unfunded capital projects every year. We're putting a lot of money into capital, and one could argue that some of the things we're putting money into capital for is to fill up the amount we have available. For example, even though roads and sidewalks are literally bottomless needs for capital, those seem to be, well, we'll take all the things we have that we really need, the building improvements, the window replacements, the major capital projects, and we'll put the rest into buildings and roads. And so, and sidewalks or guardrails or whatever it is. And I'm not sure that that's the best way to do this without some kind of a cap either. I mean, we could tax people into oblivion for our capital needs, which is essentially, you said there's an endless need for this stuff. And I'm saying we gotta, even the capital, as much as we need it, needs to have some constraint put on it through the policy. Marie?
What cap? What are you recommending?
5%.
I gotta tell you, 3% or 4% sounds pretty good to me. I mean, that's a lot of money. Normally, it's a couple of percent of the installed capital value. Now, our installed capital value's gotta be, what, a couple $2 billion.
Not
Yeah.
if, according to Richard, we really should be at $4 million a year
Yeah,
for roads.
yeah. Mark, you just said the figure, 1 or 2% of your capital investment.
Right.
Yeah, and we're not even close to there. We're like 10 million away from there.
So
That's how scary it is.
You won't be happy with 4%
No, I'm just,
cap?
I'm easy to make happy.
Oh,
Okay.
Well, here's a compromise, Richard.
I just don't want the word "if it's affordable" because I can see future boards resting on that. Let's make a decision. Mark, you want to take it to 4? Take it to 5, whatever, put a cap
Well,
on
if
it,
we
do
put a
something.
cap on it at 4, and we would force a review of this in 3 or 4 years.
Then I agree.
Anyway, then
Then
we'll
I agree.
review it at that time. And
I agree. And we know as well as I do, if we get in trouble, this guy's going to be in here, and there's going to be a resolution, and we're going to abolish this policy and rewrite it and move forward, so.
Or we'll ignore it a year, but.
Yeah.
We ignore it a year, that's what happened.
Yeah,
right
we'll-
now.
we'll-
So,
Ignore it
if
temporarily.
I may, and I don't really, 6 of one, half dozen the other, I think adding the language "if affordable" has the policy reflect the practice. And that's all I think the interest was, is you can either practice the policy, and if you're not gonna do that, the policy should then reflect the practice. And that's the judgment that the select board makes every year, is it affordable in compared to other needs of that given year and the revenues that are available? And so that's why that language, I think, is meaningful, but if you don't have it in there, then you still reserve the right to ignore the policy year in, year
Right.
out.
Marie, I'm sorry.
so I move to accept the policy with the removal of the words "if affordable" and putting in a 4% cap?
Now, the kick is 4 years down the road.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay.
Any other discussion, Tom?
No other discussion, sounds good.
Okay, we're going to review this anyway, and maybe I'd like to suggest that at the bottom of it, we put down to be reviewed in 2022.
Well, with the tax ceiling, we're probably going to be doing that anyways, right?
Whatever, okay. Fine, the motion's been made, seconded. All those in favor? Any objections? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, now, I'd like to take a look at and Debbie, could I ask that, or Stephen, that this revised, as revised version of this and that Energy Task Force be distributed to us so we have a, if you will, clean revised version for our files of
Yep.
thank you. And it can be either as part of the next packet or separate from that. So the other one is the Operating Stabilization Fund.
Right, yeah.
Policy, and Paul, is there anything different you want to say?
Well,
that you-
again, the first sentence is basically how it was appropriated back in 2003, so I didn't want to touch that. That was the main goal of getting a 4% of our operating budget in this operational stabilization fund. I deleted the second sentence because the Municipal Modernization Act removed that cap of 10%. So I wanted to bring it, from the legal standpoint, just eliminate that statement that is not true. And then I wanted to make sure people understood that there are no direct expenditures from the Operational Stabilization Fund. The only expenditures can be made for a purpose is after the transfer is made for a specific purpose. After that, I wanted to update, because this one had not been looked at in, well, December 6th of 2010 when it was last amended. I kind of wanted to update what the target balances would be, what our minimum and maximum, and what our target balances would be. I put our target balance at 7.5%. That is the target balance of our general reserves that we currently have in another policy. I wanted to up the minimum balance at $2 million instead of $1 million to reflect kind of reality. It doesn't say that we can't go below it. We can go below it only if we have a plan for replenishing it. And then at the upper end, again, going with our general reserve policy at 5 to 10% of our operating revenues, I just set kind of that same ceiling on this policy as the general reserves.
Okay. Any questions for Paul? Marie?
I just want to make this clear. What's counted towards the operational stabilization? Is that just that one fund?
It's just a one fund.
Okay.
Our general reserves is the combination of operational stabilization fund and free cash.
And free cash. So none of this, what we have in the enterprise funds doesn't
Completely
count towards
separate.
this at all?
Completely separate.
And the OPEB won't count ever
Completely.
unless GFOA changes it?
The OPEB will not count, and especially now that we voted in irrevocable trust, that money cannot be touched except for healthcare now.
Okay. And these target balances that you put in match what the ratings systems want us to see?
Again, they're looking for something higher than we currently have.
Yeah.
We're consistently written up for not having ample fund balances with like-rated municipalities of the same rating. I think the upper end would be sufficient. I actually did not go back and see if they've amended theirs, but I think when we did the general reserve policy, that's when we actually looked at them, the 5 to 10%, and that's what these match. So I think indirectly we're going to have a hit a lot closer to what the credit rating agencies are looking for.
And I know the agencies were also wanting us to review and change our policies. Does this reflect what they were hoping that we would do? Or just that we stick to our policies? Because I know there was an issue about going through our policies.
I would have to go back and look at that statement about the policies, because
Okay,
I'm not sure on that one, Maria.
all right. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Paul, I have a couple, and one is, I assume that the 7.5% target fund balance, that's just the midpoint between the 5
and, right.
and 10%, so it's a target balance. The only time I recall the operating stabilization fund being tapped in my last 8, 9 years was that October storm, and which,
That was the biggest one. I think we had some minor hits against it when we ran out of free cash, and we needed an appropriation for snow removal, for the end of the year snow removal. Not a large amount, it might have been $40,000 or $50,000, but we didn't have enough free cash in order to make up our snow and ice deficit.
okay, so that paragraph that says minimum balance, it says, shall not be reduced below $2 million unless a concurrent plan has been developed for replenishing the minimum balance. Is that considered sufficient? I mean, I'm thinking, in an emergency, sometimes you don't have time to finalize the replenishment plan, but you need the money, and I'm just wondering if there ought to be some kind of an emergency, and that requires a supermajority of town, I mean, to take anything out of this requires a vote of town meeting anyway, right?
Correct, yep.
Requires 2/3. So that's why I'm concerned about the, establishing a minimum that makes it very difficult to take things out. I think if the town, 2/3 of the town meeting thinks that we need the money, we must really have done a good job convincing people we need the money, because there must be pretty serious impact. And that's, I guess I'm just concerned that this could, I don't think it'll restrict what we're doing, but it could cause us to end up violating this policy at some point. I just assume, I don't have a proposal to make it more palatable, I just don't know anything of that. And the other thing, it says the maximum balance shall be 10% of the general fund. I'm thinking very optimistically, what would happen if it went above 10%? We gonna give a tax dividend or a tax
It's up
credit?
to you. It's up to you. No, I mean, again, it's policy. If we ever get to that 10%, and all of a sudden we have more, I mean.
But how would it get there if the policy's 7.5?
Policy target is 7.5. So we could potentially have more money going in. Once we hit our target, we can have money above the target.
Bill, we never appropriate money for the reserve, for the operating stabilization fund. Money goes into the operating stabilization fund because we have excess money left over at the end of a year, and then we've done everything we can with the free cash, and there's still money left over, and generally, we put it on the operating stabilization fund. I don't think we've ever appropriated money into the operating stabilization
No,
fund.
it's
And so
basically whenever.
It just, it happens because you have, and in this town, you could have 2 or 3 good years in a row for whatever reason and end up putting a few $1 million in there. I mean, our free cash was over $1 million a year or two ago. So I hope that happens, and I hope, we'd end up having a tax holiday or some goofy thing, I don't know, but Marie?
But, Paul, this doesn't stop us from, let's say we get to the 7.5 and we have an extra $1 million, we can turn that back to reduce the tax rate.
You could, that would be one option.
Okay,
The
so
problem is, Marie, we can't use non-recurring funds for recurring expenses. So to put stabilization funds into the operating, I mean, now you can take care of that because of what we just did with the capital budget. You can use those stabilization funds to do your capital plans and then reduce your operating budget. But in theory, we've said, it's not good practice to use one-time money from a stabilization fund.
No, I'm saying that we don't have to fund this past 7.5. So let's say we get more money in, we can just turn
Spend
it
it?
back, spend it, or give it back in taxes.
Again,
Yeah.
it's not telling you what to do with it once you hit any of these thresholds. It's basically going to be there whenever you wanted to use it.
These are our targets, but we can.
Right, they're
Maneuver
philosophical
around.
targets, if you want to call them.
I mean, I don't want to undersell, though, sorry.
Go ahead,
If I may, the goal is 10. And so to say, once we hit 7.5, we're just going to
Stop it. Yeah,
stop
you
contributing when we have opportunities like this year when, state aid is great for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't think you should look at the target balance as an endpoint. The greater your reserves, the better your interest rate on borrowing, and I think that's a key thing.
Yeah, I'm always up for building the fund up. I'm just thinking when we hit closer to that tax ceiling, if we need to pull back a bit It doesn't after 7.5, even if we need to before 7.5. It's just a recommendation.
Right, it's a
Whatever we need
recommendation,
to
and the
do.
money's always available for whatever purpose.
I think, was just going to move to accept the Operational Stabilization Fund policy.
Second.
Okay. Any,
As presented.
As presented, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Vote is 4-0. Mr. Foster is out temporarily absent.
Or if he left his car window down or something.
Oh, is it raining
I
out?
think it's raining on us.
Oh, okay. We're going to move on to new business. First one is an intermunicipal agreement with East Longmeadow. Richard, that passed as amended. So, Stephen, if you can just give us a summary of a proposed draft intermunicipal agreement with East Longmeadow.
Yeah, I apologize. This was supposed to be a clean version, but just with a draft watermark. In the version you have in the packet, there's a comment in there from me saying pay directly to Longmeadow. That was something that is not in there by virtue of discussions with East Longmeadow. So that comment should have been taken out by me. I thought I had taken it
Yeah,
out.
I had a note that we decided that they can pay directly to Long Meadow.
No. In the discussions with, and that was part of our discussions with East Long Meadow. So basically, to go back to the beginning, this intermunicipal agreement is between East Long Meadow and Long Meadow for the Dwight Road project, which is also part of the DIF, the District Improvement Financing Program. And what this agreement does is essentially bind the two towns into an agreement specific to this project. It allows the corridor improvements that we've funded and talked about and designed to go forward with Long Meadow as the project manager, even within East Long Meadow's right of way. And it establishes the payments to Long Meadow that they committed to, that Fairview Skilled Nursing had committed to the amount of $20,000 a year to offset the cost of the improvements in East Long Meadow. And where we had voted on all this before town meeting last year. So this basically just codifies all of that. We had gone back and forth on a few provisions. Because Fairview, which is currently tax exempt, may go to a taxable status at some point in time, East Long Meadow is going to pay us the $20,000 each year. And if Fairview does go taxable and the taxes exceed $20,000, then that's East Long Meadow's revenue. Anything over the $20K, which is a fair and reasonable thing for the two towns to agree on. And this, I'll just say that we had been working on this for a while. I would have hoped to have had this in place some time ago. I think I put it in a packet 2 weeks ago, but I was waiting on some comments from East Long Meadow. I finally connected with the town manager. All of the things that are contemplated in here are really ready to proceed in practice, tomorrow.
Hey, Stephen, if I could just make one comment. That sentence that, around where that comment was put in or taken out, the sentence that starts, East Long Meadow shall pay, that needs to be either say, pay the town of Long Meadow, or pay Long Meadow.
Yeah. I see it dropped. The is there.
Right.
The town of dropped out.
Whatever, so that means, I assume we get to make that change? Okay. Anybody else have any other questions, comments for Stephen about this? Is there a motion to accept this intermunicipal agreement?
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded, made by Richard Foster, seconded by Tom Lucusa. Any other comments before we vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? Vote passes 5-0.
Thanks.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is EMS rates, and we have Chief Dearborn here. If you'd like to join us, Chief, talking about the EMS rate proposals for fiscal 2019. And Chief Dearborn, we have gotten the packet that you sent us. I hope everybody has had a chance to look at it. If you could just give us the 5-minute summary, we'll hopefully move this forward pretty quickly.
Yep, so hopefully you had a chance to look at your packet. What I'm recommending this year is a 2.3% increase on the rates, which is significantly smaller rate increase than we've done the last couple. Over the past 2 fiscal years, we've engaged in a kind of a catch-up program to make our ambulance revenue healthier, so we can cover both the operating costs and the capital expenditures. I feel like, in discussions with Mr. Persterzik, that we've reached that point. We're right in the regional average now as far as rates. So 2.3% is based on, again, we looked at the regional rates, and the 2.3 equates to what the operating budget increase was for the fire department last year, which includes EMS services. So that's kind of the 10-cent version.
That's ideal, Chief. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Or Tom?
Yeah, I just a question. Now, for some residents, they may need to pay this out of their own funds, or is this all going to be just insurance?
If they have insurance, their insurance pays for it. It's a very small percentage of our residents are self-pay, and if they're self-pay, they do have to pay, yes.
And so, for that small percentage of residents who are self-pay, could we have a discounted rate for residents?
I don't
Is
think
that
legally
legal?
I can do that.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't
yeah.
sure, because as a municipality, I know as private businesses, they can maybe change
Right,
those
we do,
rates.
yeah,
but-
and I will just remind you that we do have an abatement program, that if somebody, for whatever reason, can't pay a copay, can't pay their ambulance bill, they can apply to us for an abatement. We have a form, it's the same policy we've used since, I think, the inception of the ambulance. We receive very few of them, and normally, and I think in my 3 years as chief, I've handled 4 of them, and 3 out of the 4 of the people actually had insurance, they just didn't know how to get to their insurance. They're all students, so.
Okay, so really, it's just been, in terms of these fees, there's only been, and you're one person who applied for abatement and got it,
Yeah,
because
which
most
was
people
legitimate, yeah.
either had insurance or they were, so that was my only concern, is that for folks who were paying out of pocket, but otherwise, it seems like a reasonable request. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tom. Richard?
Yeah, I'd like to place a motion on the table to accept the rates as submitted by our chief.
Motion's made, seconded by Mr. Lowe. Any other comments, questions?
One comment just because it's a comment. When in Alaska, they talked about medevac. Medevac from Sitka to Juneau is $30,000.
Yep. Helicopter from the highway to Bay State's about $6,000.
Yeah, 30 grand. So anyway,
Yeah.
My
Wait till you
son-
see the helicopter proposal he's going to come in with for the capital next year.
yeah.
Goes up that
Yeah, you're right. He'll
We're
have
gonna write some new policies.
yeah, we're getting ready for a helo pad, right?
Right on the green, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
No, Richard, Stephen, somebody's going to help.
Yeah, no, it's just a segue to the
That
next.
was just a
Okay.
joke.
Any other comments, wise Alec or otherwise? No? Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Steve.
sir.
All right, thanks, Chief.
Okay.
Do you want to dispense with the other 4 and 5? Just
yeah,
get those
I
out of the
do.
way.
Absolutely. So we have I'm going to move to appointing our tax title custodian. There's a proposal in our packet for appointing a tax title custodian, who would be Treasurer Collector Cheryl Kudnick. Do I hear a motion? to that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions? This is routine, we've done this
Yeah. No, so-
periodic basis, all right. All those in favor of the motion to appoint Cheryl Kudnick, our tax title custodian? Any opposed? Vote passes 5-0, thank you very much. Appointment of, approve our fiscal year 19 meeting schedule. I'm not even going to ask for a vote on that, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of it. And the basic reason would be that it would continue our schedule of first and third Mondays of every month, except for Monday holidays, which would put it on a Tuesday. Marie, do you have a?
I won't be here for the first one.
I was going to say August 20th. I'm not sure if other people have a problem with that one, but,
What's the?
August 20th?
no, I can't do August 20th.
Oh, well,
I didn't know
but-
if a lot of people took off
I mean,
the
we've-
end of the week. Yeah.
I think we've got that.
Other boards and committees do summer schedules. I mean, I'm not asking for that. I'm just saying that other boards and committees, especially on holiday weeks, just saying.
So July 2nd, yeah. I don't know.
What I'd like to do
I
is continue this schedule. If you know you can't be at a meeting, please let me know, because if I know we're not going to have a quorum, I can let everybody else know that we're going to.
I won't be here the second.
Okay, so, okay, but we'll try to
Keep the schedule.
muddle on.
Yeah.
Do you know of any other communities that that roll back their select board meetings during the summer?
Yeah.
I know the school committee does, but
No,
are there other
I know
committees?
other communities do it. I can't name them off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
in talking to other managers, I know that some of them go to once a month.
Once a month?
Yeah,
Just in the hardcore summer?
yeah.
The select board used to do it before the charter, when there were 3 members. They would only try to meet once during July and once during August.
Right.
Whether
And they
were
were running
successful.
everything.
You know, Mark, it'd be interesting, though, if we did a little survey and found out, because maybe there is something where we could free our time up a little bit, just during the real hardcore summer months.
David's going, yes.
That's fine. You know, what I'd like to do, Richard, also is take a look at an agenda of things we might want to do. Sometimes it's just an opportunity to we do things like any planning we want to do.
Right.
Or policies, or not policy, but.
Right. Well, there's
setting-
also times when town manager wouldn't even have to be here. I mean, there's some meetings that,
We can run it without it.
no, I mean, there's some meetings that are dealing with stuff that's not, you know, policy
Right.
oriented and all.
Well, let me just say for now that, just so people know, on July 2nd, we will have a meeting because we have an Eversource petition for some electrical work, and so we're not going to, that's a Monday, and hopefully we'll have 3 people here, otherwise we're going to cancel it. And just so you know, I asked Debbie, because it has to do with placing of a transformer on town property, send that out to us in advance of the meeting so that people who may want to
Yeah.
take the opportunity to walk the street can see what it means, as opposed to getting it the Thursday or Friday before the meeting. But we will be meeting on the 2nd for that Eversource hearing. Okay. We also have, there's a document in your packet for school committee appointment process. It was the one that we used, I wrote it with Jen Jester, whenever the date is on it, which is many, many years ago. We haven't I don't know that we've used it since. We may have used it once since then. But as I said at the opening of the meeting, there is a vacancy on the school committee. By charter, the select board and school committee jointly appoint a replacement. And as we go forward, I would be proposing that I'll try to enter into with Beth Barron. She's the newly elected chair of the school committee, to try to establish a common meeting time for us. And I just want to know if everybody's okay with moving forward with this process as being the one that we would intend to pursue. Any comments, problems?
Pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah, it's just a matter of how you elect it.
We just set a joint meeting, basically. Yep.
Yeah, so, go ahead.
So I guess in reading the document that Mark distributed, it's a pretty prescriptive process. And I can tell you wrote it because I had a hard time following it. What it basically does is it takes all the guesswork out of how do we interview them, like what order do we choose, how do we ask questions, and then, I mean, it really is very prescriptive, which I think is helpful. The superintendent and the chair reached out to me, and we didn't have a select board chair at the time, but I did subsequently reach out to Mark, that they wanted to get together and kind of discuss this in a preliminary way. And so what I would just suggest to the board is, should we follow that or modify or do something new, maybe a discussion point that Beth, offers. And so that it may be something that we end up talking about.
Yeah, I
changing.
mean, they may come in and say, we think whoever came in third in the election ought to get automatically appointed. And my comment would be that the charter says nobody gets automatically appointed. If the members of the committees jointly feel that, let them vote that way. And you can vote any way you want to, but the charter clearly says people apply for the position and you make an appointment. It doesn't say that whoever comes, and I'm not saying that they're going to propose that, but so.
Like, we've done it before, it's worked. It
Yeah.
might be a little Byzantium, but it works, so, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, and so now we're going to move to the annual board committee appointments. And what I'd like to do is not necessarily take them in exact order, because we do have one that's going to take us a little longer. So we'll start with and if everybody's got their, Debbie, thank you, by the way, for putting all this together. We've got our audit committee. We have 2 applications. Sounds like it's raining outside.
This is your scene.
You don't know if your windows are left open, Stephen.
You
So-
need an umbrella, Stephen?
So we have 2 people who have applied for, there are at least, there's a 3-year term and another 3-year term and associate terms. So is there a motion to?
I move to approve Ernie Welker for a 3-year term and Peter Landon for a 3-year term.
Okay, there are 2 different 3-year terms. I think we need to specify who gets what. And I would like to suggest that Peter get the expiring 6/21 and Ernie 6/19, only because that's what Ernie had asked for.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Motion's made, Bill Lowe seconded it. All those in favor? Okay, the motion passes. Debbie, you following?
Yes.
Okay. Board of Assessors, we have an applicant for the 3-year term. Is there a motion to?
I so move that Larry Rubin be issued the 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Motion's made, second.
Second.
Marie seconded it. All in favor? Passed 5-0. Board of Health,
I move that Dr. Robert
Bajewski,
Bajewski is given the 1-year associate term expiring 6/30/19, and Michael Umano a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
So Marie, I just had to note that you're switching somebody who was the associate to permanent and somebody who was
Oh, why
permanent to
is
associate?
why is that on the top? Because I thought they were lined up.
No, they're not lined up at all. Dr. Bajewski has been a permanent
Okay,
member.
so I need to
Yeah.
change my motion,
So will you withdraw the motion?
withdraw the motion.
Okay, Richard, you?
Yeah,
okay
we're
with-
true.
Okay,
Yeah.
so,
So I move Dr. Robert Bajewski is given the 3-year term expiring 6/30/21, and Michael Umano is given a 1-year associate term expiring 6/30/19.
Second.
motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? 5-0, thank you very much. Building Committee,
I'll make a motion that Mary Beth Morris and Bill Durkin sit on the, for 3-year term expiring on the building committee.
a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Yeah.
Okay, that motion's been made.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Richard seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. On the Building Demolition Committee, we have one applicant for 1 position. Is there a motion to, Marie?
Motion. Craig Carr for a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Pick it, Debbie. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Capital Planning, Cable Advisory Committee.
Are these in line to what they're requesting?
No, not at all.
Well, which?
Don Holland and Fred Rosenberg should probably both be appointed to the 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay? Motion's made and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0 for Cable Advisory Committee. Capital Planning Committee,
I move that Iris Smolowitz
Yep.
be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21, and Peter Van Nash be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
motion's made and seconded. Any comments? All in favor? Okay, motion passes
Boy, that's a
5-0. We're
mouthful on those names.
gonna,
Oh. They're all 3.
so community preservation, I took a look at this. If you look at the people who want the 3-year term, there's Sherry Knight and Arlene Miller, and there are 2 people for a 3-year term. And then there's 2 people applying for the 1 3-year term expires on 6/30/20. And then, and one of those people also applied to the HDC. Is there a motion?
The only question I have.
The witness, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. On the Community Preservation Committee, we're supposed to have someone appointed aren't they supposed to have someone from the Historic District? But that's Steve Weiss. Okay, I answered my own question.
Right.
These are the at-large positions.
These are the at-large positions, okay. So I'll start with the easy ones. I move that Sherry Knight and Arlene Miller each be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. And for the 3-year, which is really for the 2 years remaining on a 3-year term, for that position, is there a nomination? Marie?
Yes, I move that William Harbison be given the 3-year term expiring 6/30/20.
All right, any
Second.
motions made and seconded? Any questions, comments?
No.
All those in favor? Motion is 5-0. Thank you very much. Conservation Commission, we have 3 people. There are 2 3-year terms, and there's 2 1-year associate terms. So, Marie?
I move that Stephen Gazzillo be given the one of the 3-year terms expiring 6/30/21. John Bresnahan be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21, and Christopher Nolan be given the 1-year associate term expiring 6/30/19.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Lucusa. All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Council on Aging Board of Directors, we have 3 people, and surprisingly, 3 vacancies on a 3-year term. Marie?
I move that Francis Miffett, John Bowen, and Mary Beth Bergeron be each given 3-year terms expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Cultural Council.
I move that Thea Katsunakis, I could do this one, be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We're going to skip the Historic District Commission for now, only because we've got other things to deal with. The Historical Commission.
I move that Stephen Weiss, Margaret Cohn, David Marinelli be given 3-year terms expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. It's 5-0. Thank you. The Parks and Recreation Commission.
I move that David Horowitz be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. The Recycling Commission.
I move that Arlene Miller be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Tree Committee.
I move that Mark Talaski be given a 3-year term expiring 6/30/20.
Second.
6/30/20 or 6/30/21?
He says he
requested-
wants the
Oh, he wants-
term.
oh, okay, he wants
Yeah.
it. Okay, that's fine. All right, motion's made and seconded by Mr. Lowe. Any comments? All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, Zoning Board of Appeals.
I have no idea what she wants. Did she say? Are they,
No, we don't know
You know,
what she wants.
But,
we'll just make her
You know,
be on for 5
yeah,
years?
put her on there for 5 years. If she doesn't
5
like it,
years,
she
she
can
can
go
always
back here.
make a change later.
Oh, there is?
See the note on the bottom?
Um,
Yes.
oh, okay.
Yeah, there's
She
2.
was 10, the interview, couldn't it?
Yeah, put her, just give her the 5-year term.
I think you should give her the 5-year term, Marie.
Okay, I move that Jane Matuleski be given the 5-year term expiring 6/30/23.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Tom
Yep.
seconded the motion. All those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Now we're going to go back to the Historic District Commission, and the reason that we have...
Well, excuse me,
Go
didn't
ahead.
this guy say that he couldn't make the interview, but he wanted to be on it?
Right, but we can't, he needs to come here for an interview by the charter, so when he comes for an interview, we'll get him on it, okay? So we now need to, and one of the things that I'm, pardon me for 1 second, what we need to do is take a look at the Historic District Commission, and the reason is because it's been noted that in the Historic District Commission, there are specific requirements for membership. There is requirement for a certain number of people to be residents in the district. There's certain number, there's a desire to have, or I think a requirement that somebody be an architect, somebody else have other specific, I believe some other specific requirements. I'm just trying to pull that up to read what the historic district bylaws are. And so we also have a list of those people, and Debbie's put together. So the Historic District Commission said, first of all, members may not serve for more than 6 consecutive years. One member, where possible, must be from an architect. A member, if possible, should be a realtor. Members should be lawyers, attorneys. 2 members shall be from residents of the historic district. The commission shall, and then it just says that they have to elect a commissioner and a chairman and some other items. So we've asked Debbie House, our clerk, to go through and take a look at this stuff, and she has noted on the applications for the Historic District Commission who fills what categories of our applicants. And so we've got some people who are residents living in the district, somebody else who's an attorney, and somebody else who's a realtor, as I saw. Marie?
There are a few corrections on this. I started to make some phone calls, and when we go on this list up on top, on the current membership, John Robbins is in the historic district with the expanded district, and then Anthony Guardian owns property in the historic district. He owns rental property there. Also, Anthony Guardian is an attorney. Those were the only changes to the chart I wanted to bring.
Do we know if any of the current members are realtors?
I couldn't get that information.
Carrie Greenman.
She's applying, but I mean, in terms of the active
I
folks,
don't know.
those names look familiar?
My understanding is Sandra Crane is a master's in some curator history.
Right.
I don't know what Kathy Kexman does or John Robbins. I just found out that Anthony is an attorney.
Okay.
But I couldn't find anyone on the list who are architects.
So we got 5 people on there right now that live in the district or have interest in the district.
Well, that's currently on. Kathy is in the district. Anthony owns property in the district, and John Robbins is in the district. So we have
And
3.
Melinda
And
Cropsey's
Melinda is in the district.
Oh, yeah.
Melinda Cropsey's she's reapplying.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
She's
that's right, because
expired.
Scott and Diane are coming off, aren't they?
Yeah. So right now we have 3 that are in the district.
3 of them in the district.
And so that's, before we went to look at this, I just wanted to make those changes. And the only one in her chart that's the realtor is Carrie.
Right.
And there's another attorney, Lori, but she's in Connecticut attorney, and it says something about having to be part of the Long Meadow Bar. I don't know, it was a weird, but we have another attorney that's on there now. But I could not find anyone who was an architect, so I don't know how you want to proceed. Is there going to be one of your chart things, or do we put people in order, or does someone just throw a motion on? How do we do this?
Well, somebody also needs to be part of the historic commission, right?
Oh, yes, that's it. And I also, so I called around, and Tim Casey
That's
is.
the only one I
Tim's
saw.
on the-
Yeah, so Tim Casey is, even though it said, so Tim Casey I had as one of my guys because he's the only one that fits that bill.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion for Tim Casey, Carrie Greenman, who's a realtor, and the incumbent Melinda Cropsey to be appointed to 3-year terms.
Okay, Debbie, you catching up with that? So Steve, Tom, if you could just repeat that. You said Tim Casey, Carrie Greenman, and Melinda Cropsey?
Yes, to
Okay, those
3-year
two.
terms expiring 6/30/21.
Okay, is there a second? I'll second it for the purpose of
That
the
gives you 4
Okay.
that are in the district.
discussion. Let's start with those.
So the discussion is that you're thinking there's too many people who live in the district?
Well, I don't think, it says a minimum of 2. I don't think there's a maximum.
Right, I don't think there's a maximum at all, so.
No. All right.
Just want to
Yeah.
have it be as diverse as possible, right?
Yeah, that's the way I feel too.
Yeah, I echo that. We've got, what do we have, 3 people on there right now that live in the district?
Marie just said it was at least 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's at least 3 of them right now that you start to overpower, and you can affect some voting if you get too many people in the district and representing there.
Well, so if we look at the openings, we have essentially 6 openings, 3 for terms expiring in 3 years, 2 for, and the other 3 for alternate terms expiring in either 2 years or 3 years. So there's 6 people that can be appointed to this, and I didn't read anything that said an alternate is not a voting member. Is that, Debbie, do you know if alternates?
I don't know, because it specifies non-voting on some boards and committees, but then it uses alternate on others, so I don't know.
You know, I think the opportunity is to, from, you know, I tend to agree with Tom's approach here in that, you know, we need to put we ought to be striving to put a realtor and an attorney on this board, and so that's, you know,
Well, there is an
And they
attorney on the
store
An
board.
attorney on.
well, there's already.
Anthony's the attorney.
There is an attorney.
So we're missing
So
a
Tim and
realtor
Carrie
and
are
an
kind of
architect.
no-brainers. I think.
But we don't know that any of these people are architects.
I don't think anyone.
So, but we've got to, but the realtor is Carrie Greenman,
Right.
Right.
so we know about that, and,
So I guess I could amend the, you know, to Tim and Carrie. I guess you guys would have no problem with that? We could,
We need a third person if you're going to do all 3.
so then I guess I'll withdraw my motion. We'll do that, and then someone can make a new motion?
Yeah, you
fine,
could.
Yeah.
withdraw your motion.
Thank you.
okay?
Yeah.
Is there, Marie, I'm sorry.
All right, then I move Timothy Casey, Carrie Griedman, and Melissa I'm terrible with names.
McDonough.
McDonough?
McDonough.
Yeah, it's just, what does she do at Mass
Oh,
Mutual?
McDonough,
Yeah.
McDonough, yeah.
She's what do you call it?
Actuary. No?
No, she has to do with, it
She's
has it on the list too.
executive. She had a strong.
No, they're bios, do
It's compliance, isn't it compliance?
Yeah.
Is she the one?
I mean, I can pull up the bios.
Yeah, I'll second.
McDonough is Mass Mutual compliance.
Okay,
This
I'll
was,
second, I'll second Marie's motion.
Here, hold on.
Okay,
It's McDonough?
yeah.
I'll
It
tell you
says Mass
exactly what it
Mutual
says. Hold on a
compliance.
second. So,
He's on 38 York Drive.
compliance
Mass
consultant,
Mutual compliance.
Yeah.
board overseer, preservations, okay.
Okay.
All right,
So any, I guess we could,
so Tom, if you can just repeat your
no, that was
motion.
Marie's
It
motion.
was Marie's
Oh,
Oh,
motion.
Marie, your
Marie's
motion?
I move that Timothy Casey, Carrie Greenman, and Melissa Donna be given the 3 regular vacancies expiring, when would they expire? Oh,
The 24, 21.
6/21.
3 terms, yes, 6/30/21.
All right,
Second.
motion's made and seconded. Are there any comments, other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, now we're trying to put people into the alternate positions, whether they're expiring in 2 years or 3 years.
Who are the 3? There's Melissa McDonough, the 3rd.
Yes, Casey, Greenman, and McDonough.
All right, I move that, again, Brett Luke
Okay, is
Keswick
it? Yep.
be given the 3-year alternate term expiring 6/30/21.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay, 5-0. And Marie, we have 2 positions for alternate terms expiring 6/30/20.
Okay, I move that Paul Calento
Doriento.
and Robert McCulkey.
Mulcahy.
Mulcahy.
Okay.
Be given the 3-year alternate terms expiring 6/30/20.
Second. Motion seconded.
Motion's made and seconded. Any other comments? No? All those in favor? Yeah, thank you very much. That passes 5-0. We're done with those appointments, and Debbie, I presume you will contact those folks and ask them to come in to be, I guess they have to be sworn into their positions, correct? So, get back to our agendas. Okay. So we've done municipal point textile custodian, school committee appointment process. Oh, new adult center, next steps discussion.
The rain has stopped, so I'll be brief. The first next step from a design and project management standpoint is we are going to procure and we're going to solicit and hire an owner's project manager, which we are required to do under the public construction law. Chad Thompson, our procurement director, will be spearheading that effort. We have a scope.
Can I ask a quick, can we have the current firm? Can they do 2 jobs at once?
I think they're a big enough firm where they could do 2 jobs at once, but I think we have to procure.
Oh, yeah, go competitive, but I mean, he is eligible to bid for the sidewalk?
Yeah, but why would you want somebody from the same, they're supposed to be overlooking each other's work.
Yeah.
No.
It was 2 different
Colliers is
jobs.
our OPM force.
who's doing the-
for
who's doing
DPW.
the-
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
right.
OPM,
okay.
yeah.
We already have, so Colliers International is the owner's project manager for the DPW.
All right.
Colliers International could also submit and be selected as the owner's project manager for the senior center. We'll probably use a similar scope that we have for the DPW. They are local. So far, our experience has been very good with them, but that's not to say we may not get a firm that specializes in OPMing senior centers or something
True,
like that.
true.
The designer is still going to be John Catlin. The contract we were already in with him, contemplated a second phase of work if funding was approved, which it is. So we'll just execute the second phase of the contract with John Catlin once we have an OPM under contract. Under the law, you can't do design until you have an OPM, and we were doing feasibility studies and kind of concepts. So that's the one track in terms of the town's management of the project and keeping it moving forward.
What's the timetable, Stephen?
I mean, that stuff's 6-8 weeks easily to get all that done.
Yeah.
Just because of advertising timelines
Yeah.
and interviews and all that other stuff, it does take a while to do that.
Right.
I think simultaneously, and I have had discussions with the chair of the building committee about their role in this process, and and the town manager appoints the design review committee, so we'll take some people from the permanent building committee, maybe someone from the council on aging or something like that, like we did when we hired John Catlin the first time. So there'll be those types of things set up. Stuff we've done very recently, so I'm not worried about getting caught there. We're pretty experienced. Fortunately, we're pretty experienced at this stuff now. I do think that I will reach out to the Council on Aging Board and FLOCA to see about private fundraising. I mean, the town's not going to manage private fundraising, but I think it's a discussion we need to have with those groups about how they view their role in raising money privately, what the money would be used for, in terms of scope of work for the design, offset shortfalls. Like, I think there's naming opportunities and things like that. So there's a lot of discussions that we didn't have in great depth before the election, but that we will now be having great depth. And then we'll just be getting into, after all that's said and done, we'll just get into design. We'll have some internal meetings. I'm sure we'll have some. I'm not saying I'm sure. John Catlin will meet with the permanent building committee and present intervals of design to them and get their feedback. We'll report that back to the select board. And then at some point in time, I would guess within the next 12 months, we would be advertising the project to bid. I think, hopefully the timeline will allow this, but like we did for the DPW, I think it's advisable to bid the project in February, March, like we did with DPW, and ended up being very favorable pricing because that's a good time of year for people to be putting together bids. So as we sit here right now without talking to an OPM or the designer, in my mind's eye, if we could hit that window again of 2019, February of 2019, we could be in a very good position to get favorable pricing like we were with the DPW. So that's the plan for right now.
And Marie, I'm sorry.
I have two questions. One is, if we do have the same OPM, would there be any cost savings? Do you think they might come in for a lower bid?
It's a percentage of the project.
Yeah.
It's
The fee is
just-
a percentage of the project.
Oh, okay. And the second question is, if Philoka doesn't want to be the fundraising arm, what are your ideas on what we're going to do?
I just want to get a sense of what people are thinking about. Like I said, it's not, I'm not going to be the fundraising chair. I mean, it's not really an appropriate role for me to take. It's just making sure that if fundraising does take place, the town is included in those discussions and kind of is aware of what's happening, because there's going to be materials that we're going to generate through the design process that fundraising groups, friends of groups, if you will, are going to want to use. So we want to make sure we're just in sync with any efforts that are going on. So that's really all. No one's come to me and said, I'm going to raise money for the adult center yet. So I'm just trying to see, is that person out there in the community? And if so, let's start communicating.
All right.
One last question, and that is that naming issue. I know we just put a policy in a few years ago that the select board has to vote on all naming. Are we going to give some leeway to that, or, I mean, are we going to let every single question, every time there's a naming issue, it comes in front of us, or are we
So-
going to have a subcommittee that starts approving it?
So the way I see that now, and I hope I remember that I said this when it comes down to it, is I think one of the, I have in a previous position, I recruited the person, but the project retained a professional fundraiser, which may be something we want to look into. There are people who will just coordinate the entire thing and do the visits and, really quarterback the fundraising campaign.
Right.
Ideally, as we get through design, you'll know there are specific rooms, areas, brick patios. I mean, the things that can be named for donation will be known, I would say, probably by midway through the design. And then what I would guess is the fundraising consultant can then present you a package of naming opportunities. And then you would just approve the package of the naming opportunities, like for this, like certain dollar amounts versus the actual individual names. But
So I would.
that's how that typically goes.
I would say that we should move forward on something like that, because that would create some support to Philoka. They could turn it down, but at least we could have a package, and then, because that's usually the way it is. People say, I want to do a bench in the name of my father or my mother, and we could at least start the process, and then it could grow from there. But if we don't do anything and we just leave it on Philoka's back, that, I don't know if that's quite fair, because there's a big
I'm not suggesting that we give it to them. I'm just suggesting
Yeah.
that they are the Friends of Long Meadow Older Citizens
Yeah.
Association, so they are the place I would start. And if they view their role as different from basically a capital campaign, which is what we're talking about, then we would just say, do we need a capital committee, like not capital planning committee, but do we need a fundraising committee of volunteers specifically for this project?
Yeah.
Again, these are things that that need to be discussed.
But even just getting a basic list of the kinds of things that can be done and turn that over to them, so then they could take the ball. They could decide how long they want to carry the ball, I guess, so to speak. But at least that will hand them ball to begin to think of. And I think that's a great idea, Stephen, in terms of that. Marie.
So Tom, I recall that during the school building project, the opportunity of naming rights came up, and there was a lot of interesting discussion about it. It's interesting that one of the things that was pointed out, and I believe it's on Nantucket, but I could be wrong, that there's the Carly Simon Performing Arts Center at a high school somewhere on Nantucket or something like that was
Would be-
donated by Carly Simon with this very large gift. And yet the question came up in Long Meadow, do we want to have municipal buildings or major sections of municipal buildings named the Microsoft Center or the Amazon this or whatever? And
Yes.
I will.
If they give us the money.
Well, and that's your opinion, Bill. Yes, but there are a lot of people who say it's public money, it's public, venue, and
Yeah.
perhaps ought not be named after the highest bidder. Now, you know, you can say what you want to about Gillette Stadium and all that stuff, but most of those aren't public venues. And so I think, Marie, to answer your question, I think we ought to have a discussion. I mean, in the town, we've had very little opposition to, you know, the bricks over by the football field and that are, you know, more innocuous, but we have not gone to the point of naming buildings or naming rooms of buildings necessarily. But we may choose we want to, but I think it's a larger discussion than just turning it over to Faloka to do that. I mean, the other thing I'll just say is that, you know, with the town having appropriated $14 million for this project, the impetus by we need to raise money is got to be a well-developed story for what you're going to use that money for that isn't already covered by the $14 million that the town appropriated. I mean, if I was to be a major philanthropist to this, I'd say, what am I doing that isn't already covered? And I think that identifying what we're going to, you know, say we're going to name these rooms after something, the rooms are going to be there whether you get them or not. And so where's the money actually going to go? Is it offset town expenditures, or does it get something extra? You know, I mean, you can name the room and use the money to buy fitness equipment, but you still have to.
Yeah, I think these are all things that are going to be determined as we go down the
Yeah,
path.
but I don't think we should presume
Right.
at this point anything. And Marie, to answer your question, that's where the started is. I think the policy is a good policy in terms of it makes us look at the items, and it makes us look at the proposals, because I might be very happy having a Microsoft or Amazon or even, you know, Carly Simon room, but there may be rooms I'm not happy having, or people in community.
I think the reality is, I think there is a desire to raise money and contribute money to offset the town's cost, which then offsets the cost of the taxpayer, including many seniors. The one thing I'll caution, and this is really a discussion for another meeting some way down the line, if we're going to do that, you have to give those, if we have a professional fundraising consultant, they have to know that if the person says, yes, I'll give you $10,000 to have this bookshelf named after you, that happens. Not, I'm going to give you $10,000, then I'm going to ask the select board for permission to do that. It's got to be something where they won't be able to raise the money if they can't market these naming opportunities. And I'm not saying, and maybe the select board just decides we don't want any names on anything other than, you know, $200 for bricks in the patio, and that's fine. I just think at this point we're at the front end of this, and you just said next steps. This is one of the options that we're going to kick around.
Okay. That's fine. All right. Any other comments on this topic? Any other long-term topics? I think, as I look forward, as I said, at our next meeting, there will be an Eversource hearing on placement of it's kind of like Rinaldi's Part 2, but it's not at Rinaldi's. Placement of a transformer on town property.
Where?
Yeah, it's over by Big Y Shops. So it's, you did it once, now we're gonna end up, here comes the steamroller of all the other requests to put things on town property, my personal opinion, but and some other things that I think we need to have a discussion, in my opinion, about financing our major capital projects, because that's where all the big money's gonna go. So Paul, we may ask you to start putting together some presentations over the next 4 to 6 weeks so we can have that discussion. We all know what's going on, just so the people at home here, there was just a back of the envelope to some degree summary by our bond persons who support us, Clark Rowell, who had some numbers in there that were very eye-opening based on what the cost may be for the town over the next 5, 10, 8 or more years. And so I think we need to have that discussion. And we will do that. With that, it's interesting 9 o'clock. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Before that, I just want to confirm that when I snarfed, it was caught on camera, so it'll be in high definition on YouTube forever. Right, I saw Brian the Holly said just.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Richard?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Motion's made, second. All in favor? Motion's adjourned, folks. We'll see you on July 2nd.
Congratulations,
Mark.
Mark. Before 9 o'clock, will you
I know,
stick to